What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So early on in Palworld, you're going to need resources, lots and lots of resources. So some of them are more common than others. Obviously wood, stone, fiber, those are things you're going to find very quickly and very early. But as you progress through the game, you're going to need more specific materials. Specifically, when it comes to minerals, you're going to need copper ore, then coal, sulfur, and quartz. So being able to reliably find and gather these resources is going to be a huge piece of making sure that your progression isn't put into the slow lane. Now, if you want to skip just straight to the farming locations, please use the chapters below. But before I jump into those, I did want to talk about the prerequisites for those new to the game, just kind of tips to make gathering resources a little bit easier. So first off, get a flying mount. Now, these locations that I'm going to cover are reachable without one. You can obviously run there, use a ground mount, but it just makes it so much easier when you have something that can fly. Now, I recommend a Nightwing early on because you can unlock the flying saddle at level 15. Now, if you don't have one and you need to find one, here is where you can locate them. So fun fact, didn't know this for a long while, but if you've seen a PAL, you can find their entry in the PAL deck, and then you can click on Habitat at the very top to see where they can be found. Now, at later levels, I would recommend maybe moving off of a Nightwing and into like a Suzaku. These tend to fly much faster, they consume stamina more slowly, and they're just a better flying PAL. Now, after you catch a Nightwing, go back to your PAL gear table and craft the saddle for them. That way, once you summon them, you can hold F on PC or whatever your partner's skill button is on console, and then you can mount up and you can fly. So next, you want to make sure that your party has PALs that increase your carrying capacity. So for instance, you could use something like a Lunaris, which is more of a higher level PAL. Early on, you can use like a Cativa, you can use a Bronze Cherry. So all of these are going to increase your carry capacity, which means you can hold more resources, making each trip more valuable. Now, you want to make sure that you also have gear with the proper resistance. So tier 2 cold and tier 2 hot should be enough for where we're going, so make sure you do have those. And then lastly, I would recommend you drop a PAL box at each of these locations to set up a mining outpost. So this is going to allow you to build a wall around these resources, then deploy your mining PALs and let them go to work. They're going to harvest and gather materials for you, reducing the amount of work that you actually need to do. Now here's a pro tip on how to set up a fully automated base incredibly quick. So set up a berry plantation, and then take some creatures like a Dumud, for instance, and a handful of mining PALs and just unleash them. They need to have at least mining level 2 in order to farm copper ore, and they need to have at least level 3 to farm quartz and coal. Now, the cool thing about the Dumud is that they're also a watering PAL. So they'll water the plantation, and then they'll also mine the resources. Then you can deploy a couple transport PALs to carry things to storage, and it becomes a nearly fully automated outpost. You have PALs mining, you have Dumud watering the plantation, you have transport PALs harvesting the plantation, moving the food into the food box, and then all the mining PALs doing the mining. So it's a fantastic little setup. Okay, so with those tips out of the way, let's talk about the actual farming locations / base locations that you can set up early in the game to get a bunch of copper ore. Now, copper ore is going to be your first big bottleneck because you're going to need ingots in order to fuel, well, just about everything that you're crafting. So being able to have a nice place where you can get a bunch of copper ore is going to be really, really important. So this is one of the better early game spots that I've found for two reasons. One, you can see there's a really kind of tight cluster of copper ore nodes, and two, it's easily defensible. So you can see all of your enemies are going to be funneled in one direction here at the north. So if you have raid events enabled on your server and you need to defend this outpost, then everything's going to be coming from one direction. So this is a good spot to get started. Now, this is located in between the Seabreeze teleporter here and the small settlement teleporter here. For reference, this is where you start the game over here on this shore, and you can work your way down and around all the way down to this section, and this is where you can set up your base. Now, there's a couple other locations early in the game that you can really kind of take advantage of whatever nodes are out here. So just to the north, you have this field here. This is going to have between 1 and 4 nodes. It's not overly reliable, but it is a good place in a pinch. It's just south of the Bridge of the Twin Knights. The third place is just south of Cinnamoth Forest. You can see I have my base here. This one is very similar to the one we're currently looking at right down here. It's a tight cluster of copper ore. It's easy to build a base here, and there's enough space where you can really kind of expand that base and add anything you need to add, like production lines, all of that stuff. So from a copper ore standpoint, those are the 3 places early game that I would recommend. Next up, let's talk about coal. Coal is going to be kind of the second big resource that you need to make sure that you have easy access to, because you're going to reach a point where you need to start creating refined ingots. And refined ingots are going to be the thing that's like the new bottleneck. So it's going to be required to do a whole bunch of different armor, weapons, ammunition, that type of stuff. So you want to make sure you have easy access to coal and copper ore, because you need both of those in order to create your refined ingots. So there's a couple of really nice coal locations early in the game. Let's jump over to those really quick. Okay, so here's the first early level coal location that I really like. It's located on this cliff, it's easily defensible, and you can just kind of unleash a bunch of mining pals and transportation pals. They'll do their thing. It's easy to kind of just get set up and go. So this is located just east of Gobfin's Turf, and just to the west of Natural Bridge. So if I scroll out, you can kind of see where this thing is right here. While you can get there on a running mount, again, flying mount is just a little bit easier. This location right here is copper ore, so you do have a secondary location here. This is another large copper ore field, but this coal location typically does pretty well. You have between 4 and 6 nodes that are typically out here, and these guys just go to work. So coal location number 1, highly recommend this one. Now, the other locations I mentioned earlier around Anubis are over here in this desert biome. Now, this is just to the northeast of Investigator's Fork, and we can see the Anubis world boss here. But just to the west, we have another kind of large coal farm, and then to the southeast, we have another large coal field. So there's a lot out here. Any of them are fine. This one's a little bit of a mid-game kind of higher level, whereas this one over here is closer to like the low 20s. So depending on what level you are might be kind of a determining factor whether you want to set up shop here or over by Anubis, but any of these are going to be great farming spots. So next we have sulfur. Now, sulfur is a requirement for gunpowder, and because we all know that Palworld has some serious firepower you can unlock in terms of shotguns, assault rifles, all that stuff, we want gunpowder for bullets. Now, the perfect areas for sulfur are going to be in the far west region, in this lava region over here. Now, the problem with the lava region is that it is a high level region, around level 50, and you need access to sulfur before level 50. So some of the better places that you can find this sulfur, again, is over in this Anubis section over here. Now, sulfur is a little bit more uncommon than the other minerals, so you're not going to find it in large clusters. However, you can find a few nodes sort of placed sporadically throughout this desert region. That way you can go through, kind of mine what you need to mine, and then take it back to the base. Now, the problem is, unless you drop a PAL box out here, you're going to have to run all the way back to either the Sealed Realm or the Investigator's Fork. And that's just, it's tough. It's a tough route, and it's not something that's easily accessible. But you can also find sulfur in dungeons, and typically it's 1 or 2 nodes, so early on you'll have access to that in dungeons, but ultimately if you want a reliable thing that you can go and you know it'll be there, it's going to be this desert region around Anubis. And lastly, we have quartz. So quartz is a top-end material that's required for circuit boards and top-end crafting, electric appliances, all of that. And while this is pretty absent in early parts of the game, it does become a little bit more plentiful as you get deeper into the world. Now, I found a really nice spot where you can harvest a decent amount, but again, if you're at a point in your progression where you really need this, then it's very much a recommendation to set up an outpost around this quartz field, unleash your miners, and set up a mining operation. Otherwise, you're going to be hoofing it all the way back to a teleporter, and it's not particularly close. So use those PAL boxes, set up those outposts, and take advantage of that capability. So this quartz field is located just to the north of the Free Pal Alliance Tower entrance and just to the southwest of the Sand Dunes entrance. So you can see it right here at the top of this hot spring. After you discover this kind of snowy region here, you will need cold resistant armor, like I mentioned toward the beginning of the video, in order to come and harvest this. It has to be at least resistance 2. So please keep that in mind. So you can see this quartz located right here at this rock formation. This is one of the tighter clusters that I found in the game, and truly this is one of the more reliable spots. So guys, those are the top areas to farm mineral resources in the game and continue fueling your progression. Again, this is one of the bigger problems, is trying to figure out how can you continue to harvest enough resources and set up enough mining outposts to then continue your progression through the game. Let me know if you guys have any other cool farming spots and share with the players below. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.